What is going on, everybody? It is the one and only Q here from Retro Q Gaming, and we are back with our lovely little weekly weekend edition of our Quack experimental podcast. There's plenty to talk about this week, thankfully. Some ups, some downs, some positives, some negatives, some heartbreak, some joy, some whatever it is. But you know what? Before we get started, we might as well give our first proper segment a quick little, let's call it, appropriate one, shall we? So, all I can say is, Gillian, hit it. And as they say, damn, it feels good to be a gangster. So, what are we talking about for our first one? That's right, we're going to talk Metal Gear, or rather Metal Gear Solid, or maybe even Metal Gear Solid 2 Substance, or maybe, just maybe, all of the above. Because as we made a video on earlier in this week, it is a very, very happy moment for retro gamers and Metal Gear fans alike, because the original Metal Gear Solid, and Metal Gear 2 Substance have made their way back to PC. I say back because technically they already did exist way back in the day in physical form, and well, one of them was even DOS, so that's a little bit of a yikes right there. Thankfully, thanks to GOG and Konami working together, they've all been successfully rescued and ported and now legally digitally available across GOG for everyone to enjoy. Naturally, they are very old PC ports, so you do require fan patches, community hotfixes and whatnot. But to be honest, if you go into the reviews on GOG, usually the top reviews you can find are the fan links to the kind of patches and community fixes and updates and etc. And as I have threatened to do for a long time, these are the games that made me make a GOG account. That's right, I finally made a GOG account. I bought all three games, Metal Gear Solid, and Metal Gear Solid 2 Substance. Of course, I did the smart thing and I downloaded them without the client because, let's face it, who needs a launcher for your launchers, am I right? We've been over this multiple times. Anyway, I'm happy. Everyone else seems to be happy. So now, all I need to do is rescue No One Lives Forever. And maybe Silent Hill 2, 3, and 4. That's also Konami. But we move now from a joyous and momentous and celebratory topic to something a little bit more down, more disheartening, depressing, and just that little bit somber. Because now it is time to put something to rest. Just like we did several months ago with the PlayStation Vita, when Persona 4 Golden was ported to PC, and therefore there was no reason for the PS Vita to ever exist to pretty much anyone anymore. Now, alongside our little Sony faithful handheld, ill-fated handheld I guess would be more appropriate, we have the 3DS. The Nintendo 3DS. Finally ending production after 9 long years. Very long years at this point. Now, the 3DS has many good memories for so many people out there as well. I remember getting my little original Cosmic Black 3DS on day one. And one thing a lot of people don't remember is that the 3DS actually almost flopped. That's right. Within the first year, the 3DS almost flopped. And it's primarily down to someone who gets kind of overlooked for this kind of thing. That's right, Satoru Iwata. Most people don't remember, but the 3DS almost flopped because of him and his insistence on not passing out dev kits significantly prior to launch. Now, of course, this whole flopping and all quickly changed after the obvious flop, and they were rushed out to all developers, and they were sending out all their Nintendo ninjas to help people get the games on them as quick as possible. And of course, there was a couple of small incentives. You had the ambassador program for early adopters who would get games that were essentially not available normally, virtual console games. That's right, remember when Nintendo had virtual console? And of course, a swift price cut as well. Now, Having said all that, it was extremely memorable to gamers. And it gave many extremely positive experiences, many high quality, long experiences, both for me and many other people. I mean, you can look at so many evolutions of existing series. Let's say, for example, it had the best Fire Emblem game, Fire Emblem Awakening, Mario Kart 7, Metroid 2 Remake, Samus Returns. It had Pokemon to the point where it had the Pokemon generation, thanks to the 3DS, that got me back into Pokemon after two, we'll call it, after 2 gens that I had waning interest because they felt like more of the same. Pokemon X and Y came out, completely blew me away, reinvigorated my love for the series, and got me right back into it. And then, of course, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. I guess in my case it was Alpha Sapphire, but you get the idea. Got me back into it, and then some. And then, of course, well, we don't like to talk about Sun and Moon for obvious reasons, but it even had stuff like N64 Zelda remakes. Both of them. It had Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. I almost forgot Majora's Mask's name for a second. It even had both versions of Shin Megami Tensei 4, both the normal one and Apocalypse. It had a Tales of the Abyss port, a high quality PS2 RPG ported over. That's amazing. Super Mario 3D Land, another one, just to name but a few. Now, everyone has so many memories about it as well. I mean, there's Circle Pad Pro. Resident Evil Revelations started as a series. Granted, there's only 2 games in it, but it started as a series because of the 3DS. Again, sure, it was kind of limited by the hardware, but it worked. It worked. And of course, it was eventually ported over to everything else and made better. But because of the size of it and the nature of it, and because the system was properly designed and the games were properly designed, which is more that can be said for the Nintendo Switch, unfortunately. The 3DS was a true portable handheld system, not just in size, but in the games that were made for it. It was designed around it. It wasn't just getting cheap, low-quality slapdash ports. All the games were made for the 3DS, with the exception of 2 that I can think of. One of them, which is Xenoblade Chronicles from the Wii, that ran like that was just absolutely awful. It shouldn't have been put on there for the new 3DS. And then the other one, of course, was Smash. But just to give you an idea, look at some of the games I've listed off. Many of them are RPGs. Imagine how much time I put into all of those. Some of them aren't even RPGs. And I still put hours and hours and hours into those. And just to give you an idea of how much I loved the 3DS. I have so many virtual console games on it. And sure, there was a massive misstep when Nintendo promoted the whole unified account system between the Wii U and the 3DS, and then said it was the best thing ever, but gave you no benefit for it. Even with all of that, and Iwata almost flopping the console, or handheld, I still managed to buy, I believe it's 7 members of the 3DS family. I have my day one small black 3DS. I have my Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, new Nintendo 3DS XL. I have a Fire Emblem Fates 3DS, new 3DS XL. I even have the Pokemon Sun and Moon, new 3DS XL. And then I have the Pokemon Red, Pokemon Blue, and what was the other one? And Pokemon Yellow, 2DS Pokemon variants. I bought all 7 of them. You can't say I don't love the 3DS. I don't think anyone would argue that I don't love the 3DS, because I do love the 3DS. So much time. Between all my convention trips with friends, trading Pokemon, multiplayer battles with whatever game, hell, even going online with some of these games. That's right, you could go online with several games on there and play on the internet. Crazy. Crazy. And it was done so well. Why? Because everything was made appropriate for it. Farewell, 3DS. You will probably never receive a true successor. And all that we get after that is an absolute slapdash mess. That is an insult to your name, 3DS. For shame. I hang my head about that Nintendo bitch and the Soy-Cons, the Wii 2.0 that sullies your name and your legacy. But moving to something a little bit more modern, or I guess not so much modern depending on the way you look at it, we're talking a little bit about Bethesda. Now, we're not talking about the whole Microsoft buying out Bethesda as big news as that was, but let's face it, we already covered that already. Now, the big news here is unfortunately some bad news, because it is already starting with some big negative stuff. So, it's theorized and it's planned that Bethesda's next, well, I say Bethesda as in Bethesda Game Studios, the same guys that make the actual Fallout games, well, it seems like Starfield is going to be their next game, and it's actually their new IP, and it's going to be coming eventually. Of course, it's probably going to be a while, but unfortunately, everyone was hoping with the advent of next generation consoles, with stuff like the PlayStation 5, with stuff like the Xbox Series L, and of course everything in PC, well, everyone was hoping we were finally getting a new engine, rather than just the crap they've been peddling for close to 10 years now. It might even be a little bit more, but just gives you an idea of how old and outdated it actually is. But unfortunately, Starfield, and probably by extension Elder Scrolls 6 afterwards, is announced to be using the same engine as Skyrim and Fallout 4. That is a very, very heavily dated, heavily outdated, and frankly pretty shite engine. Now, it's being upgraded. It's talking about how this is going to be their biggest and most significant upgrade yet, but it's still, on its base, at its core, fundamentally the same piece of crap engine. And it is massively disappointing, as that engine, even on next generation consoles and top end PCs, is absolute shite. But speaking of absolute shite, let's move on to another topic of similar nature. We're going to talk a little bit about Spider-Man. Now, earlier in the week, I theorized that Spider-Man, which of course is being remastered on PlayStation 5, I theorized that it wasn't going to be getting a free upgrade for PlayStation 5. And I had a feeling that if this turned out to be true, it would probably likely extend to other games in, I guess you could call it Sony stable, their first-party exclusive stuff, or first-party games rather, because some of it's not exclusive. Some of them have come to PC. Now, this was eventually confirmed by Sony and Insomniac, so it gets a little bit weird. So let me just say once off before we go into more details. Spider-Man on PlayStation 5 is not a free upgrade from the PlayStation 4 version, and if you do wish to play the remastered PS5 version, you need to pay extra for it. So the only ways to receive this new version, this remastered PlayStation 5 version, is one of two ways. A, you can buy either the Spider-Man Miles Morales Ultimate Edition on PS5, which comes with Miles Morales and the remastered version. It is important to note that the Ultimate Edition does cost more than the regular version of Miles Morales. Or if you buy Spider-Man Miles Morales on PS4, which does come with a free PS5 upgrade, well, you're given the option in-game or in the menus or somewhere in there that will allow you to buy Spider-Man Remastered after you upgrade onto the PS5 version. Now, this is anti-consumer as fuck, if you will, especially because it's a remaster. And especially on top of that, when third parties are offering free next generation upgrades on the same console. So Sony, as we all know, is allowing companies to offer free upgrades. One of the big appeals of the transition from last generation to this generation is upgrades, because they all run on the same type of architecture, the same type of hardware. It's just an incremental step forward, an incremental step up, an incremental upgrade as you go. They're supposed to cut out all this extra crap because of all the different architectures. Moving from AMD Power PC or whatever the hell it was, I can't even remember what the 360 was at this point. Move to regular x86 on the Xbox One. Moving from the PlayStation 3 Cell onto the PS4's x86 architecture. This is just going from x86 to newer x86, more powerful x86. x86. This was one of the big draws and was what we were told would be the big upgrades for all this. Now, you have a lot of Sony fanboys out there who are defending this, of course, and they're all saying, oh, well, you know, with how much effort they're putting into it, it deserves to be a paid remaster and all as well. What absolute idiots. These people are absolute clowns. CD Projekt Red, for example, are not only going to be upgrading Cyberpunk 2077 to a next generation version for free, but they're also going to be doing it for The Witcher 3, a 5-year-old game at the moment, from 2015. And Xbox One is going to be ported to the Xbox Series L as a free upgrade. It's going to have ray tracing, better load times thanks to the SSD. Not just a standard little backwards compatibility upgrade, it's receiving a proper next-gen version. Same with PS5, and of course the PC version is getting all these updates for free as well. So it really highlights just how fucking out of the loop Sony are. And not only that, but their biggest competitor, Microsoft, are doing the same thing for their consoles. And not only are they doing the same thing with third parties on their consoles, they're doing it for their own first party games as well. And like I said, I expect this because it's now confirmed it's now confirmed for Spider-Man at least anyway. I expect this to pass on to every other game out there that they do from the first party. God of War, Ghosts of Tsushima, a game that just came out several months ago. Horizon Zero Dawn, granted that is a multi-plat with a better version on PC already. And of course, The Last of Us Part 2, again, a game also only several months old by the time I write these notes. Absolute fucking madness. There is no reason for any of this, and if you defend it, well, you deserve to get continuously fucked by Sony. You're sending the message that this is okay, and they will take that as loud and clear to fuck you again and again and again for your money. But hey, Sony may be the king of taking rapid succession L's lately, but let's face it, Xbox Series L is always up for taking an L. And this time they're doing that yet again. They finally went into more detail about their expandable SSD storage. Now, we all knew a little bit about it so far, that at first there'd only be in 1TB versions just to match what's in the Xbox Series L as well. And of course it works on exactly the same read speeds, the same interface, the same everything. It basically works exactly the same as the internal drive. So that way it's proper expandable storage. You get 100% the same experience for your next generation games by playing them off this. So it's proper, true expandable storage. Now, because of the nature of all of this, they're presented a little bit of problems, especially because, unlike Sony, they're using a proprietary style system on there as well. Of course, this is all done by Seagate, and now we have a bit more info on that. So, the 1TB versions, which are the only versions available that we know of just yet, are going to be available for $220 in the US. That is, of course, without tax, because that is a backwards-ass country with a backwards-ass way of doing stuff. £220 in the UK, absolute yikes, and €250. Of course, the UK and European prices are with tax because we live in a civilized world. Now, this is around what I expected. I believe I said somewhere between 200 to 250, simply because I looked at the price of the drives, and then I figured, okay, you've got some Xbox branding on the top, and you've got a little bit of proprietary tech in there as well. So I think this is all around terrible options, simply because it's a 2400 Mbps Gen 4 SSD with proprietary tech and branding on top of it, just to jack the price up a little bit. Now, I do feel there is one thing going around at the moment that's a little bit misrepresentative of this whole situation, because many people are looking at the price of what is basically the Samsung 980 EVO Pro, which is most likely going to be a PS5 compatible drive. It is significantly faster than what's in the Xbox Series L because it's brand new, it's cutting edge, and it's top of the line, so naturally it's a bit more expensive. So for example, you're looking about $230 to $240 for one of those drives. Again, that's ex-tax because it's all in the US for the announcements at the moment. So it is technically a little bit more expensive, despite these being slower drives with proprietary tech on the Xbox. Now, the reason for that, most people would think, oh, but the PlayStation 5 one is even more expensive than Microsoft's proprietary one. That's because it's a worse, slower SSD. If you get a slower SSD of comparable speeds to the Xbox Series L, well, it's slower than stuff like Samsung's Evo 980 Pro. It's slower than Sabrent's new Series 4, and of course it's slower than the new king of read speeds, the new A-Data, because that one is even better than both of the other two. But overall, I don't think we're going to have a PlayStation Vita situation, but it's going to be the second next best thing. But you know what? It wouldn't be fair if we didn't call out everything the way it should be. Now, this one, of course, is taking a dig at the glorious PC gaming master race, because for once, everything is not high frame rates and low temperatures as it should be, because we have the RTX 3090. Now, unfortunately, the RTX 3090 is a massive, high-resolution, overpriced disappointment. Now, you may be wondering why. Well, if you remember all the technical specs, the details, everything that was shown off and everything that was touted, and all the metrics that were used and everything during the actual announcement and reveal, it was promised to be double that of a 3080. In fact, 8K 60 FPS gaming, as they supposedly, kind of, if you will, show it off. And you know what? I fell for the marketing scheme at first too. But then, it got a little bit suspicious. Because for some reason, let's look at the RTX 3080. The 3080 benchmarks went live the day before the 3080 became available for pre-order. Now, that's a whole other story about how that launch went anyway. But, suspiciously enough, the 3090 had no benchmarks. Officially, at least, anyway. It didn't have benchmarks going live before launch. It had them going live and reviews going available later in the day post-launch for the RTX 3090. That's a little bit suspect and highly suspicious, especially for such an expensive GPU. Now, on top of that as well, there were leaked benchmarks several days prior to launch. And unfortunately, these leaked benchmarks turned out to be true. So this monster GPU that we were promised, that was twice the power, double that of a 3080, unfortunately only turned out to be 10 to 15% more powerful than a 3080. Now, despite all those claims and the actual specs that should have led to that, well, the 3090 is a mess. I know I was looking at it just for the sake of it anyway at the time at launch, and I could have picked one up. I had them available to me. I managed to get in during the rush, because we all know how the 3080 launch went, and I could have pre-ordered the 3090. I was looking at one of the EVGA, I think it was the FTW3 version, something like £1,800, would have been about £2,000 in euro, and you know what? It just wasn't worth it, if you ask me. I can pick up a 3080 whenever they become back in stock for probably 7, maybe €800, give or take, and the performance I get from there would be phenomenal, especially coming from a GTX 1080. Now, I could pay almost triple that price and get another 10 to 15% in almost every game. No, fam, I'm excessive, but that is even excessive by my standards. So here it is, we are confirmed that I will be getting a 3080. Unfortunately, all this went down afterwards, after all the 3080s were sold out for weeks ahead of time now at this point. But I will eventually get one. I just hope it comes around before the, what do we call it? Before Cyberpunk. And that is, of course, the big issue there too. Now, it makes me sad. It just makes me sad about all of that. So, I will still be jumping forward to the true, proper next gen, because of course a 3080 will slaughter consoles, because why wouldn't it? Hell, a 2080 does for the most part as it is. But it just leaves me disappointing. The 3090 should have been so much more. It was promised as so much more. And if it had delivered on those promises, it would have been worth the £2,000. I would have gladly paid that £1,800, which is, like I said, close to €2,000. I would gladly have paid that. It would have stung. But once I got that baby, once I put that in the computer with the brand new AMD Ryzen 4900X, some PCIe 4.0 SSDs, it would have been worth it. It would have absolutely been worth it. But unfortunately, I have to settle for a 3080. Not much of a settle, if you will, considering how big of a jump it's going to be. But either way, I'm looking forward to that 3080, even if the 3090 absolutely burned me. But anyway, we're coming to the end of it that we really, really love, as always. Now, before I get into the usual what am I playing segment, I do want to talk a little bit about a new potential change coming. So I'm currently streaming a lot of stuff, or I'm getting back into the habit of it. I just finished Mystic Quest Legend. I guess that's coming out of the next segment, but we'll talk about it there too anyway. And I want to do so many games. I have a big list of stuff I want to do. RPGs, survival horror games, just action games, just platformers, 3D platformers, 2D platformers, whatever it is. There's so many different games that I really want to get around to streaming again and all as well. And I want to kind of figure out a way to do it all properly. And I'm toying around with the idea of a possible streaming schedule. Now, as it stands at the moment, it's not confirmed that I'm going to be doing some type of schedule. And if I do, it's probably going to take maybe a couple of weeks and a little bit of trial and error to find a proper balance. I don't want to be streaming 6 days a week, as fun as it is a lot of the time, but I have other stuff I want to do and play as well. I don't want to be playing all these hype new releases and all just for the sake of it. I want to play games that I know I enjoy, that I know I love, or ones that I think I will, that I've either passed up, never finished, whatever it is, and I want to be able to share them and have them all here available for all of that as well. So I'm going to toy around. Maybe at one time I'll stream maybe twice a week. Then maybe, depending on how it all goes, maybe I'll be able to up it to 3 or 4 times a week. Because let's face it, I've got a fairly busy job. It's a fairly, I won't say high stressful one, but kind of high demand, if you will. I have a lot to do during 5 days of the week. Not only that, but I'm also going back to college in, what's the date today? In basically a week or so. You know what? I don't even know when it is. I have to look. No, you know what? I'm going back in about a week and a half. So that I have to factor that in as well. I also want to play a couple of other games and all in the meantime, just for myself. Like, for example, I don't want to be forced to stream 6 days a week when I want to play Cyberpunk. So, you see my point here. It's going to take, if I do decide to go ahead with this, we're going to take it slow. There's going to be a little bit of some growing pains, some teething pains, to find out that proper balance. And then you can look forward to a lot of stuff, a lot more streams, being a lot more frequent and a lot more scheduled, a lot more steady and a lot more consistent. But anyway, that's where we come on to our best segment of every single week that everyone loves. Q, what's up? What's going down? What's going on? What's the 411? What are you playing? Well, as I mentioned, Mystic Quest Legend is already done. The streams are finished. The game is completely done. Remember, that's Final Fantasy Mystic Quest for you American fraudsters out there. I mean, Final Fantasy didn't have an established name over here, so they had to change it. But on top of that as well, ODST, Halo 3 ODST, launched in the Master Chief Collection on PC. That is also done. Again, it's a much smaller game, but good times overall. A little bit different in that way too. Now, my Mafia Definitive Edition, I do have a free copy of that as well. It came with my laptop, but as much as I'm looking forward to playing it and I think it looks like a great remaster, well, actually hell, it looks like a great remake, I'm waiting for the 3080. I'm not in any super rush to play Mafia Definitive Edition just yet, and I will gladly wait for a 3080 to be able to get in and do that bad boy properly. Now, next up from the streaming front as well, like I said, I do have the big list. I'm not going to give away it all just yet, and I haven't settled on what is coming next. We just finished an RPG. I might swap over to do something different as a little bit of a palate cleanser. Maybe it'll be some type of puzzle game. Maybe it'll be a survival horror game. Maybe it'll be an action game or platform game, whatever it is. Something before we go back into another RPG. Now, I do have some ideas of what comes next for the RPG. These aren't confirmed, but we have a couple of little candidates on there too. One of which is Chrono Trigger. That's right, that's an important one. We have our beautiful little Chrono Trigger. There's another one as well in the running. We've got Breath of Fire 3, that's a big one there too. We also have a couple of other Super Nintendo games like Illusion of Time, aka Illusion of Gaia for you US fraudsters out there. And it could go many different ways. There's one other one that I'm keeping secret, I'm keeping in the wings. It's probably not coming anytime soon, but it's my secret weapon. It's my ace in the hole. It's the trick up my sleeve, if you will. And that one, I figured out how to do, because I would have had to stream it from either a PS1 or PS2, and it would have been kind of low quality. Because I can't stream it from the PS3, because my PS3, well, one of my PS3s is completely bricked. My other PS3 is basically on its way out. Its disk drive, its slot loading disk drive, is pretty much fecked. So I was toying around with the idea of buying a new PS3 Super Slim, so I wouldn't have to deal with a slot loading drive. But then I remembered I can play it on the PS2, I can feed it into the FrameMeister to get some beautiful little HD scaling, and then I can feed that into the capture card. So there is something available on PS1 and or PS2 that's kind of high profile for me and my channel that would be happening eventually. But hey, I have a big list of stuff to play. It's looking at 20, 30, maybe even 40 games. It's going to be a good year and a half, 2 years, 3 years, however long it takes to stream all of these bad boys. But anyway, that is then, and this is now. And now we are at the end of our 74th episode of our Quack Experimental Podcast. As always, feel free to slide on into that comment section below. Leave whatever it is you leave. Damn it, I was doing so well. Leave whatever it is you need to leave in that comment section below. Salt, praise, questions, butthurt, opinions, praise again, whatever, whenever, whyever. That's what it's there for. Until then, of course, remember to hit the appropriate button to let me know how I did on the video. And while you're at it, why not head on over and hit the subscribe button and even ring the little notification bell so you can get one of these glorious, high-produced, no need to typo anything, not going to trip over my own tongue, whatever it is, episodes that we produce every single weekend. YouTube and Google may have other plans about telling you about this stuff, but hey, we know where the real stuff is. Anyway, of course, as always, thank you so much for watching, and remember that winners don't play switchboards.